Josh, here we are, episode 65.
Five.
Man, it's going by, man.
Yeah.
We're making it. That's what happens whenever you do once a week consistently.
Right.
65 weeks. So last week I was telling you guys about some photography jobs that I was going to have, and I had one of the big ones this week, mountain biking. And in that advertisement for the mountain biking, it said that there was a devotional at 11 o'clock on Saturday. And I wanted to see what that was about, if it was legit, if it was just put in there for, for whatever. So I'll tell you all about that today, along with my experience with that organization.
Awesome.
Here's the truth.
Okay.
It was a full-fledged devotional.
Okay.
It was fantastic.
Good.
So this.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, I was very glad to see it also. So it's a 2-day event, high school, grade school, and I think goes down to, fifth grade, all the way up to varsity seniors, mountain biking in Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. It's wonderful. There were literally thousands of people at this event.
Yeah, you had told us about this a little bit last week.
Yes.
It's an event that you were hired to be the photographer in
Right.
this mountain bike race event.
Yep. And whenever I raced back in the day, it was a left field sport, I'll say. It was, it didn't get a lot of attention. Now this, at least around here, this is a legitimate high school sport and grade school sport, and I just love that because I love the sport and I love seeing kids get interested in something that's very healthy and develop a healthy habit. And anyway, so I was a event photographer for them, and I'm, before we even. A week before or 2 weeks before, I saw the event page, and so organized. Everything is so organized from, like 11 to 11:15, 11:15 to 12:45, that kind of thing. It's all right there. And from 11 to 12 on Saturday, it said devotional. That's all it said.
That's an hour long. Okay.
Yeah, just 11 to 12, just a devotional. Okay, cool.
Quick side note.
Yes.
I noticed you have a hat that I'm not used to seeing. Is that from that event, cycling hat?
It is not. This is
okay.
from Walmart.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
Walmart. It's one of the higher class Walmarts. It's a
Has an E at
Walmart.
the end.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, and I'll pull up the name of the event organizers here in a little bit. But so I wanted to get there. What were we doing? We were recording that day,
Yes.
Saturday.
Yeah, and you wanted to get out as quick as you could.
Right,
so you
to
could
get there at 11,
right.
to see the devotional. So, did that, went, and over the intercom, I said, okay, devotional's starting, da-da-da-da, meet us over here, da-da. So, worked my way over there. At least 100 people at the devotional. Mm-hmm. They had a band where people, kids were singing, drumming, guitar, singing. And a girl a high school girl gave her testimony, and after that, the person that organized the devotional came up and gave another testimony. So it was a legitimate praise and worship devotional.
That's cool.
I was so happy to see that, and that, come on, that filters down to everybody, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to go, but we're going to have it right in the middle of everything.
Right.
So you're going to see it.
Well, I like that. I mean, there's a wisdom in making it more than like a little 15-minute thing. Because I've been at events before where, like, you're there for a specific event, but then they put a devotional in it, and it's like, it like obviously doesn't fit. It's like they put it in there because they know it's a group of Christians gathering together, and so there should be a devotional. And so it's like a little 15-minute thing that, cool effort,
Right.
But it always comes across as like really, really awkward.
Last minute or just because or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what can I do in 10 to 15 minutes so that we can check this box off?
That's exactly right.
Not necessarily that is how they're approaching it, but that's what it feels like
Right.
sometimes.
And I was really concerned that that's what it was going to be. I just wanted to see it for myself. And I did, and I was so happy. And that's, for me, that set the whole tone
Yeah.
for that rest of Saturday and Sunday. I went over there Sunday after church also.
What's worse, I've been, I went to this event once. This was years ago. I think it was I'd been invited to some real estate event. Since I was an engineer and real estate agents call me to do engineering stuff all the
Right.
time, and they were going to open up this event in prayer, and the guy gets up, and I kid you not, he's like, "Our Father, Mother." You know,
Oh, my goodness.
it was one of those things. It's like, okay, just don't even do it at all.
Our
Come on.
Father, Mother. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Covering all bases of whatever
It's like,
they're trying to cover.
How do you pray to appeal to all religions
gosh,
and none at the same time? You know, that kind of thing.
Wow, right, exactly.
I was glad to hear it wasn't like that. You know.
It wasn't. It was full-fledged Jesus-centered.
So what they talk about?
Well, there was 3 songs. So this is the 2 organizations: Gulf Coast Youth Mountain Biking Association and ACAMTB, Alabama Cycling Association. And MTB is an abbreviation for mountain biking. So it was 2 of these.
You got the letters in a different order.
ACAMTB, mountain
MTB.
biking.
Oh, I thought you said MBT.
No, MTB, ACAMTB. So ACAMTB is the overall organization. Gulf Coast Youth Mountain Biking Association is a subsidiary or of that. As far as I can tell, that's the way it is. So if you read anything in any of these Facebook posts, you wouldn't say anything about faith-based. Mm-hmm. But they said over the intercom, whenever we were doing the devotional, this is a faith-based owned organization, an organization with Christians that are people that are doing this. And, you know, we can argue or we can talk about all day about what you should do, how you should present yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? As a Christ-based organization. Mm-hmm. But here's what I would say to people who say that you should do that, and if you're not doing that, you're coming up short. I doubt that the organizer would be able to get into all of the schools that he's been into. There's 45, 50 different schools that are involved with this. I doubt he was able to get into all those if he presented it as a Christ-based organization.
Well, that's a common missionary tactic anyway, because there's a lot of countries who won't let you in if you're there as a missionary. I have friends who are missionaries in countries like that, and they don't go in under the guise of, hey, we're here to be a missionary. So, hey, we are, workers under this type of profession.
There you go.
That's how they get into the country. And while they're there, they are working in that profession, but they're also acting as a missionary and starting churches and getting to know people and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's no different in the secular world here.
Yep, totally agree. And I'm so impressed with this. If you do, I will say this: if you do something and you are saying somewhere along the line that you are a Christ-centered organization, or you're not shy about that, and you're really talking about it, it needs to be top notch.
Yeah,
it needs to be top notch because we're already behind the 8 ball, kind of. Look at all of those hypocrites over there. They're weak. They're everything. And if you present something in a way that's half-hearted, it just piles on top of all that, right? These guys have everything down to a T. Are you sending a text over here? Okay.
That was from Chris.
They should be off.
It was a video that he sent like an hour ago, and it just finally went through.
This organ, I've been to many mountain bike events. First of all, this one is 10 times bigger than the event I've been to, including nationals that I raced at.
Like the bikes are bigger?
No, about thousands of people.
Yeah.
Of course, thousands of people. Hundreds of riders and families, grandparents, parents, brothers and sisters. Every time a rider comes out of the woods, people are screaming. It's like a college atmosphere.
Yeah.
I mean, if you stay in one place, you can hear screams all over, for many meters around. Go, and you're saying their names. Go.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's great. It
Right.
really. It's like a soccer atmosphere, but
Yeah.
spread out over.
Where was
miles.
this located, by the way?
UWF,
Oh, okay.
University of West Florida, Pensacola. And I know those trails very well. That's where I ride.
Yeah.
So I was able to ride my bike. They gave me a name, a plate, a number plate. It said photographer on it. So whenever they saw
So people
me,
know not to cheer.
they know that I'm okay being on the trail because normal people can't get on the trails.
Yeah.
Trails are closed
Yeah.
to racers. So I was able to go through. They go, oh, he's okay.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that was funny. But the plates, number plates, has a number and their name on the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
So what was a challenge and what I found to be an asset was those plates, but getting those plates with the rider in focus and the way I want them to look, clear, good color, just get them exposed properly. That was a big challenge to start with, but once I got the workflow down, I loved the pictures because they're almost portraits with the number and the name in front of it. So my thought was, this is great for them as they get older. This is great for the families that may want to have a print of it, put on the fireplace mount, whatever. All the stuff that I didn't have whenever I was racing. It was totally different back then. The cameras weren't even available, weren't that good to be able to have that sharpness. So keeping all that in mind, taking the pictures, it made it easier and more difficult in a way because I knew what I wanted. Getting it was another thing.
Okay.
So in post, it took a lot of time to get the pictures the way I wanted them to get them.
Now, when the cyclists were passing by you, did the cyclists know you? Did it have any effect on their concentration at all?
Some of them, the ones that really weren't that serious, one little kid, he'd come by me, he'd go, take his hands off him, I go, hey, man, dude, you're not working hard enough if you're able to pay attention to me and give me the thumbs up and everything. But he was loving it. He was last in his group, but he was loving every second of it.
Now, from your vantage point, because you mentioned that you were on a bike as well. How did you make that work where everybody's moving and it's all on this course? Are you racing along with them to get pictures? Are you like taking shortcuts so you can like get ahead of them and like position the shot, or how are you working with that?
All valid points and questions, and all questions that you ask yourself before you go out there. Because really, this is my first mountain biking event that I've taken pictures of. I've been involved with mountain biking for all my life practically. So I have something in my head that I want to get. So what I did was, knowing the course, I was able to go from parking lot to the exact spot that I knew I wanted to get to and just stay there.
Okay.
So there's 2 days. First day, I went to 4 or 5 different key locations where I thought I could get a good picture. The lighting was okay. I could get a somewhat of an action shot, but the first day I really wanted to get just the portraits from the nameplate to the top of the head where the rider is doing something, but they all kind of looked the same. I wanted to get those basic shots down on the first day.
Was this like a start to end race, or was it like a lap?
Laps.
Okay, so they're coming around the same spot over and over again.
Yep.
Okay.
Very beneficial.
Yeah.
Very beneficial. But getting everybody, it's going to be impossible for one person to get every shot. So I got as many as I could. So the first day I went to 4 different spots, and what happens for that day I got a spot where the riders would come by me one time, and then in 5 minutes they'd come by me again, and I would move maybe 50 yards, and they'd come by me again. So I was able to get almost everybody.
Right.
And I concentrated not just on the front runners, but the guys and girls in the back also. To me, they are more important than the front runners because they're the ones who have probably never got their picture taken doing anything athletic. From talking to the parents and the grandparents, that's exactly what's happening. The ones that maybe have been doing video games for most of their life have come home and said, I want to join the mountain bike team, having no indication of them being interested in mountain biking at all. So I'm really interested in finding out how that happened. Now, where did you hear this? How did you get psyched about wanting to get into mountain biking? Beautiful to me. So I was very intentional about staying in one spot until I got everybody. You know what I mean? Coming the back runners and everybody. So,
what was your favorite part about the whole experience?
Learning about the parents, learning about how important it is to the kids, how they found out about it, and talking to parents that this is the first sporting event they've ever showed interest in. I loved that.
Yeah.
As far as the pictures go, I like pictures. Like I got a lot of photos of the kids on the start line. 'Cause I remember the butterflies I used to get, even if I had a lot of confidence on the bike because I worked really, really, real hard at it. Probably harder than anything I've ever worked on. So I was confident whenever I'd start. I'd psych myself up and I'd get on the front line and getting ready to start, and I look around and just in my head, I wouldn't really feel this way, but in my head, I look around and go, man, y'all got some nerve showing up. I don't even know why you're spending all this money to get here. Why in the
Do you know who I am?
That's just all in my head. I would never exude that. It's not really the way I felt, but I kind of built my confidence that way, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what I was really saying was, I know one thing: nobody has worked harder than I did.
Right.
They might be more talented, and they might win this race, but they're not going to outwork me. I guarantee you that they're not going to do it. Ended up having a good amount of success in the levels that I raced.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was talented. It was because I worked hard. I worked very hard at what I did. So I know what they're going through. Just to show up out there, you can't just get a bike and go, I want to go beginners. You've got to dedicate yourself to be out there just to finish the daggone race.
Right.
This isn't just a up and down. This is miles and miles, even the lower levels of riding up and down and all over the place. It takes a lot, for somebody to get out there. So I want to have the back runners to have some photos of themselves also. Hopefully it won't be the last thing that they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is it's not just a one-off race. It's a whole series of like 10 or 12 races.
Oh, so you're going to be doing more of this with them?
No, because this is the only one. If it was closer, I would. All the other races around Anniston and Birmingham, Alabama.
So it's not just located here. Okay, so they go around to a bunch of different places.
Go around all.
Gotcha.
So knowing that,
what would it take to make you have to go to make you go to the other ones?
if they were to pay me a flat fee, or if I were to sell enough photos to pay for room and board and gas and all that stuff, I'd probably do it if I broke even.
Yeah.
Just for the experience and see what would happen next year. But I'm not even going to come close to breaking even. Okay. It's just if I traveled.
Right.
Since it was, 10 miles from my house, it's mostly all profit,
Right.
So I would love to do it. If it was here, if it was based here, that would be part of my volunteer work. That would be part of my ministry work, is to work with these kids and to be a coach. And they have coaches and mentors. It's unbelievable how well organized it is.
Yeah.
It really is so good.
I think that would be cool, given your experience with mountain biking over the course of your life, to be a coach to some of them.
It would be. I would do it if it was closer, but it's just not. It's all Anniston, Birmingham after this,
right
around that area.
Teach them how to think at the starting line. I don't know
why y'all even show up. You've got some nerve showing up.
My coach can beat up your coach.
Again, I just want to make sure that the listeners know that was just in my head. Just little mind games I was playing. The way I looked at it was this. Everybody's working hard.
Yeah.
Everybody's working hard to be there. I think I'm working harder, but every little bit of whenever you're hurting and you're in pain and you're riding and you're trying to get up that hill, every little bit counts of confidence or ability or whatever,
Right.
So that's
So let me go back to this though, because this is interesting to me.
all right.
When you were racing and you were on the starting line, you had the butterflies and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How long did those stay?
Until the butterflies stayed
Yeah.
until the gun went off, and I got into the woods. So
Okay.
the way that mountain bikes usually start, even in the pro levels, it will start out where most of the spectators can see you, and you get the hole shot. So the hole shot in motocross is around the first corner, and then you start. Everybody goes for the hole shot side by side almost, and then it kind of thins out. In motocross, you take that first turn. That's the hole shot. Everybody wants to get that hole shot, but really, realistically, 5 people are able to get that hole shot. It's such an advantage to be out front. Same thing in mountain biking. So you just start off in the line, and 100 yards down, 200 yards down is the woods. That's where you go in the woods. That's the hole shot. My goal is to get from here to there in first place. Now, if somebody's just faster than me, I'm going to evaluate that by the time I take off, and by the time I get there, I'm just going to tuck in. I'm not going to waste all my energy getting to the hole shot. If I can get out in top 5, I'm good, because I'll find a way to pass them in the 2 or 3, 4, 5 laps that we're doing. But you need to get out front in the top 10 at least, top 5, because after that, you're dictated by everybody in front of you, because you're going in the woods, you're going to single track. So you go
Right.
to wide to skinny, and it takes so much time on the trail, time and energy to pass somebody. You want to be out front setting the pace.
Yeah.
So that was the first goal. After that, I wasn't nervous.
Okay.
After I start pedaling, if I evaluate that a little bit more, it's so I've got my right foot on the pedal, gun goes off, right foot goes down. Now my left foot has to hit the pedal exactly right where I can click in.
Right.
Because I'm clicked into the pedal, so I can pull up and go forward, pull up and go forward, so you have a rotation of power instead of just up and down. You as an engineer will understand that, right?
Okay, hold on a second. So this is something I don't know about
Okay.
cycling. Explain what you mean by that, because I'm thinking in my own experience as a teenager with a mountain bike. If you want to go faster, you stand up and you just start pushing down on the pedals.
Yep.
You're saying you're pulling up on the pedals
I'm
too?
absolutely pulling up
So
on the pedals.
your legs are
They're working
engaged
360.
the entire way.
So
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So in training, early on in my mountain bike career, I trained really hard and a lot on one foot pedaling. So I could take my foot off the left pedal, and I could just pedal with my right foot and do the same thing with the left foot. So if you think about that, if you let go of any power, it's going to jerk whenever you're going over the top, right?
Right.
Down is okay. You coming up, you're going to start losing that. So the trick is to have a smooth stroke.
Yeah,
on
it
both
makes
legs.
sense to be a more efficient way of pedaling because you're not losing like 180 degrees of potential
That's right.
power transfer. Yeah, I never really thought about that.
Yep, and that's a place where you increase your ability as a mountain biker whenever you learn how to do that. Now, you say efficient. It is efficient, but it's a lot harder. So
Yeah.
I don't know if efficient is the right word. Once you learn how to do it, and you train your core and you train your legs to do that, yes, it's absolutely more efficient.
Efficient in terms of like how much of that of the rotation of the pedal you're using to transfer power.
Yes,
to.
yes, yeah. You're transferring 360 times 2.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. You just increase your speed and your capabilities a lot
So
more.
is that what you mean by clipping in? It allows you to pull up?
It allows you to pull up.
Okay.
If you're not clipped in, you're not going to be able to pull up. You pull up, you come off the pedals. If you're clipped in, you're picking
I've
up.
never had clipping pedals.
It's an interesting experience. You're pulling up and pushing down at the same time.
Yeah.
In my head, the way I did it was I thought of cross-country skiing. I thought of going back and forth. In my head, I'm thinking back and forth. And whenever I did that, it smoothed my pedaling stroke out a whole lot. I would just think about back and forth. Instead of up and down,
Yeah.
back and forth. And that worked for me to keep that pedal stroke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that would take some coordination training.
Takes a lot.
Yeah,
It takes
like,
a lot.
patting your head and rubbing your stomach.
Again, you can do that in your sleep if you learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that, the kids are going to learn early on to do those things so they can be better that's what I could bring to them as coaching if
Okay.
I was doing that, but I'm not able to do that. What was I talking about before you asked that question? I don't remember. Something really, really important. I don't remember what it was.
Just overall details of it.
It was a lot of fun. I went to a place, the first day I went to a place where it was, the second day I went to a place where it was dangerous, and it was a 3-step level descent. And I got some really good pictures of the kids coming down off. They came in front of me and went to the left and went down. So I got some really good pictures some action pictures of them doing that.
Tell me more about the devotional. You started talking about it.
Yes, the devotional. So I just wanted to see if it was legit.
Okay.
And it was. And I was so happy that I went and saw that. It just gave me more of an incentive to be involved with this organization. You can't make that stuff. I mean, you could. There's some serial killers who did. They acted like they were born again Christians. They were deacons, and they were all. BTK was that way, man. He was a president of the what do they call him? President of the members.
Right.
And he was one of the most evil people that you could ever hear and see. He talked about killing children like he was given a report, about engineering or something or another. He was just an evil guy. My sense is that they're not serial killers. My sense is that the mountain biking.
What did they talk about though?
3 songs. And then the little girl came up and gave a testimony about her life.
Oh, okay.
And she spoke specifically to all the other riders that were there about how she kind of compared how she trains to her life with Christ,
right.
And how sometimes you train all that you want to train, and you're just going to have a bad day. And sometimes you're going to train, and you're going to go out there, and you're going to feel like nothing could stop you. So she did a good job for a teenager.
Right.
I shouldn't say that. She's a very young person. You'd see her, and your first thought is she's got a lot of growing up to do. But I tell you what, she was very mature and was able to talk about her testimony, her coming to Christ, very much in a very mature way.
Cool.
Yeah, it was good.
There's a couple things that you mentioned that kind of stand out to me. Because full disclosure, when we started today. When you got here, if those of you who are watching on video, you'll notice like there's some changes being made. We got some acoustical panels.
Beautiful.
I was mounting a bunch of these today, and so I was doing that instead of what I'm usually doing is prepping for the content and everything. And I just kind of told Destry like I'm going to feel it out while we're going, and sort of transition into the deep dive Bible study part of it. After the deep dive bicycle part of it. But there's a couple things that you've said that have really resonated that I think bear mentioning. You mentioned, when you're at the starting line, you had the butterflies. As soon as the gun went off and you start, getting into the woods, like those immediately left. And I would imagine one of the primary reasons for that is because of the work and the dedication that you put into practicing for it. Because once and where that kind of is a shared experience in my own life. Like one of the things I enjoy doing is teaching, and I remember whenever I start a new class or something, there's usually that the butterflies that are in your stomach the first day because. You don't know anybody in the class. Nobody in the class knows you. You're like doubting your content. Do you have enough content to fill the hour? Are you sure about the content you're teaching? What if they ask questions that you don't know the answer to? That kind of stuff. And then what's kind of a weird feeling though is pretty much the moment I start in on it, all of that leaves because. There's an excitement about the content because I like what I do anyway, and I like talking about it, and
Right.
I like teaching about it. And so those butterflies, it's like, as soon as the gun goes off and I'm in the woods, the butterflies go away.
As soon as you're clipped in, you're ready to go.
Right, as soon as I'm clipped in. And it's because of the preparation that goes into it, in a lot of ways.
Yes, that's right.
And looking in Scripture, in a Bible study that I've been going through recently on Tuesday nights, we've been going through the book of Hebrews, and Hebrews 11 is probably the most popular or most famous portion of Hebrews. It's the faith chapter, right? It starts out, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And a lot of times there's kind of like tiered approaches to that. We either take that verse out of context or just we like isolate that verse and we start, building doctrine on it or sermons or whatever. Or we look at the faith chapter and all the examples that are in the faith chapter, and I'll read a couple of them here in a minute. And we kind of view the chapter in isolation. And I want to start with that, looking at these in isolation, but then look at them in the broader context, because I think it speaks to what we both experience about the butterflies and the practice and all that kind of stuff. Well, Hebrews chapter 11 starts out, now faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That in of itself is really kind of an incomplete statement. One is because it starts with now, which means there's something that came before it that's important, because they made a statement. They're like, okay, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And
That being said,
right,
let's leave that for a second
exactly.
and go over here.
So put a pin in that.
Yep, that's right.
Now, it says, for by faith, the elders obtained a good report. And who are the elders? Well, it goes through and lists them. It starts talking about all of these heroes of the faith from the Old Testament, and we often look at this chapter as this is how faith works, and this is how faith is personified in these people. So through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen, which were not made of things which do appear. By faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it being dead yet speaketh. By faith, Enoch was translated, that he should not see death. And I'm not going to read all of it, but he goes through, by faith, Enoch. It says, by faith, Noah. By faith, Abraham. By faith, Jacob, or Isaac. Jacob. It starts listing all these. Through faith, Sarah. And just time after time after time, it lists all of these examples from the Old Testament of people who lived in faith. And by the time you get to the end of it, it says, this is going down to verse 32. What more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, of Barak, of Samson, of Jephthah, of David, Samuel, the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, they were tempted, slain with the sword, wandered about. They were destituted, afflicted, tormented. It goes through all this, and it says, of whom the world was not worthy. It says, all these having obtained a good report through faith, receive not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should be made perfect. So that's pretty much the entirety of Hebrews 11, and we look at that and we're like, these all these people that are being talked about are just like so totally awesome in their life story, in the account of their faith. And yet when we go back in the Old Testament, read about them, they had a lot of self-doubt. They had a lot of they struggled with their faith.
Right.
One of the ones that was mentioned, Sarah, Abraham's wife, right? God had promised a great nation through Abraham, and Sarah, not necessarily doubting that promise. There was a problem where she couldn't have children, and so she instructed Abraham, like, fall back to our Chaldean days. If you can't have a kid with me, you can have a kid with my handmaiden, and that will be associated with me. It'll be as though it were my kid, and that's not how God.
What could go wrong with that?
Right. What could go wrong with that? We're asking ourselves in the midst of Middle East conflict, with the descendants of that decision.
Yeah. Wow.
And then in talking about Abraham, Abraham being a man of faith, and we always learn about Abraham as being the one, God told him to leave Ur of the Chaldees and go to a land that'll tell you, like, go move. And Abraham did, not knowing where he was going. What Hebrews doesn't record, though, are all of those doubts, because it was years before Abraham actually did that. I think it was 30 years before he actually picked up and moved. Yeah.
Okay.
Hebrews 11 does not talk about Sarah doubting, doubting the mechanism of God bringing about His promise and trying to take matters into her own hands and help God along, so to speak.
Gotcha.
It doesn't talk about. It mentions people like Samson. We know the account of Samson, right? How he struggled with the Philistines, with his wife Delilah, all that stuff. He struggled with faith. He struggled with sin, but that's not recorded in Hebrews chapter 11. It talks about Moses. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child. And they were not afraid of the king's commandment. But by faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. By faith, he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king. When you go back and read about Moses, when God called him, he was standing in front of the burning bush, and God was telling him, I'm going to send you back to Egypt where you grew up, and you're going to be my representative, and you're going to free people from slavery in Egypt. And what did Moses say? I can't do that.
I can hardly talk.
I can hardly talk, which was not true at all. It was the self-doubt, it was the butterflies, because not only could Moses speak, he did so on numerous occasions. You got to remember, he was educated in the Pharaoh's palace. He had the best of the best education. He had the best teachers, the best training. He was being groomed to be the next Pharaoh. He could speak in front of people. And yet, he struggled with he struggled with faith. That's not recorded in here. And we even see later in Moses' life the different things he struggled with, and yet at the same time, multiple times he did things that were in direct opposition to that struggle. For example, struggling with being able to speak in front of people. He spoke in front of Israel many times, ripped them new ones very eloquently, many times.
Well put.
Right? Rippeth them a new one, I think is how the Bible puts it. But
yeah. Depends on what version you're reading.
Right? But that's not recorded in Hebrews 11, because here again, as people who are saved by grace, who are given the appearance of holiness in front of a holy God, God doesn't remember our sin. And you can see that played out in Hebrews 11, because it talks about these people living by faith. and living with the knowledge of that promise of the Messiah. And it doesn't record all the struggles. It's almost as though God, quote unquote, forgot those. He removes that from us, because that sin that we struggle with under the righteousness of Christ is removed from God's sight. And I think that's really interesting. But that's taking Hebrews out as just a standalone chapter. Back in Hebrews chapter 10, it talks about, and let me look this up here. Hebrews 10:28. This is the chapter right before the faith chapter. He's talking about Moses again. It says, not Moses specifically, but the law of Moses. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much sorer punishment, suppose ye, shall be thought worthy, who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant wherewith he was sanctified an unholy thing, and had done despite unto the Spirit of grace. So, in other words, like there's a message that's being talked about in the grand arc of the book of Hebrews, and he pauses here and says, "You remember back in the Old Testament when someone who had rebelled against the law of Moses was put to death in light of 2 or 3 witnesses. Like if you were being tried in court, and there were 2 or 3 witnesses that their witness matched, it was consistent, and they were bringing an accusation to you, that was enough to convict you." And so, knowing that about if there were people who had witnessed you doing something, and brought that to bear, that was enough to convict you. And then it goes to Hebrews 11. It says, look at all these people who lived in faith. All of these people: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Samson, Jephthah. All these people, more than we can even fit in this book, the author says. And then verse 12, it says, now. Well, it says, wherefore. Same thing. Wherefore, seeing we're also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily beset us. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus. And so what's interesting there is like, remember the how important it is to have the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Look at all of these witnesses who have gone before us, who we are standing in the presence of their memories, and they actively lived in faith and struggled with sin, and yet still lived in faith under the promise of what was going to come. Because we're standing in their presence, we're compassed about with so many witnesses. Why are we so apt to fall to the sin that so easily besets us? Like, look at the example of all these other people. We're part of that same tradition. We have access to the same source they did. So wherefore we're compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. And let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking into Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. Now that's a lot of theory. What I often find is we'll talk about that stuff, but then what is the mechanism of doing that? And I think this comes back full circle to the butterflies that you feel at the beginning of a race, right? Your success in that race was based entirely on the practice that occurred before the race, right? And what I often see is the ability of our ability to come out of temptation successfully or with failure depends entirely on our preparation before that temptation happens. How do how do I put this? We had talked several episodes ago about like what happens when something devastating happens. Like, how do we get through that?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about this there, like our ability to see the grander picture of it, or to at least survive it, depends heavily on how our relationship with God is in the years before that.
Right, when stuff is good.
Yeah, I'm going through a Bible study on Esther right now, and one of the things that she's famous for is that statement where she finds out about Haman's plan to kill all the Jews, and Mordecai discloses that to her, and she's now tasked with going in front of the king of the Persian Empire, unannounced, uninvited, and potentially being killed as a result of that because she came uninvited, in order to bring this to his attention and hopefully get something done about it. And she says, if I perish, I perish. And in other words, I'm going to do this. This is what God wants. This is for my people. And if I perish, I perish. That kind of attitude, or that kind of mindset doesn't happen in an instant, and it doesn't happen by chance. That there was Mordecai raised her, and there had to have been like an entire upbringing that like put her together to accomplish that.
Right.
Right. And when we're looking at this, how do we live a life of faith? It really comes down to like how much time are we spending in studying the Word of God? How much time will we spend praying? How much time do we spend listening to worship music, or just developing that thing? Because there's going to come a time when we're faced with something that's going to be really difficult.
Yes.
And if we haven't spent the time training, if we haven't spent the time learning how to, like you were learning how to apply power 360 degrees, then we're going to come up with something challenging, and we're not going to come out of it ahead.
Right.
So I don't know. That's kind of what popped into my mind as you were talking about all that stuff.
That's good, Josh. At Gun Club last week, you asked me how it went. You weren't able to make it, and one of our devoted members talked to me afterwards and said that his daughter just lost her baby, and it was their first baby, and she lost it. I think they were 6 months pregnant, and this was like our student, he hasn't been there in a couple weeks, and that's why he hadn't been there. And he said, if we didn't have faith in our family, he said, I don't know how we'd make it through. Not having faith is just not an option to them.
Right.
But knowing that there's going to be, the baby will be reunited, they'll be reunited with the baby, knowing where the baby is, knowing that this is the ultimate, knowing what the ultimate destination is, and having the faith has allowed them in 2 weeks not to forget by any means, but to get through the hardships,
to survive,
united instead of divided.
Yeah.
And it was such a powerful testimony that he gave, and that was from years of upbringing.
Yeah.
Right. Their whole family, however this guy influenced his family or somebody influenced him, they're all united in that, in their faith.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're able to get through it so much better.
That's interesting too, because that's almost exactly what David said after, because the first child that he had with Bathsheba ended up dying in childbirth, and obviously David was devastated as a result, because of it and all that. But the statement he made in his recovery from that was, "I'll see that child again.
Yes,
that child isn't fully gone. I know where it is. And I think that's, and the reason David was able to have that perspective is because he had spent a lifetime
Yeah.
developing that characteristic that we know of, where he's called a man after God's own heart.
Right.
So that when he does encounter those things, or when he is tempted, or when he struggles with faith, he survives that struggle.
Does it help you to know that our heroes of the Bible struggle with their faith just like we do?
Oh, absolutely.
Doesn't it though?
Yes.
Isn't it? Isn't that such a human way of looking at our Bible heroes?
I find comfort in it in two ways. One, that they struggled, but two, that the end record of it doesn't mention that struggle.
They overcame whatever struggle. They're
Not
human.
only that, but God didn't hold that against them.
Oh, God didn't hold it against them.
Like,
Absolutely. That's right.
as a believer who has placed his faith in Christ, and knowing what that means, that the righteousness of Christ is applied to me. When God looks at me, he doesn't see my sin. He sees the righteousness of Christ. And you can see that bore out in God's narrative of these people. Like,
right.
This was a guy who lived by faith.
That's right. That's right. So grace covers doubt.
Yes.
Grace covers a multitude of sins, right?
Yeah. And when God looks at me, he sees Christ.
Amen.
And I like that a lot better
Hallelujah.
than seeing me.
I'm telling you what. Me too, Josh.
Right?
In both ways. Josh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Chris, thanks for being here. We appreciate it, and we'll see everybody next week.
See ya.